Have you ever watched someone lie to your face, day after day, thinking they had you completely fooled? What would you do if you discovered your husband was faking a medical condition just to cheat on you, and then decided to let him believe his act was working perfectly? That's exactly the game Soo-Yeon played for 6 devastating months. And when the curtain finally fell, the only person left standing in the ruins wasn't who anyone expected. It started with a phone call at 2:47 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday night. Soo-Yeon had been married to Min Seok for 5 years. 5 years of cooking his favorite meals, ironing his shirts to perfection, and building a home she thought would last forever. He worked as a senior manager at Hanul Construction, one of Seoul's mid-tier development companies. She had given up her promising career as a pharmaceutical researcher to support his ambitions, believing that his success was their success. The phone call came from Seoul National Hospital. Her husband had been in a car accident. Soo-Yeon's hands trembled as she drove through the rain-slicked streets of Gangnam, her heart pounding with every red light. When she arrived at the emergency room, doctors in white coats surrounded her with grave expressions. "Mrs. Park, your husband sustained a head injury," Dr. Kwon explained, his voice measured and clinical. "He's stable now, but we've observed some concerning symptoms. He appears to be experiencing selective amnesia." "Amnesia?" Soo-Yeon repeated, the word foreign on her tongue. "He remembers his name, his job, basic life functions. But his episodic memory, personal experiences, relationships, seems to be affected. He didn't recognize his own mother when she arrived." Soo-Yeon felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She walked into his hospital room with legs that barely obeyed her commands. Min Seok lay on the white hospital bed, a bandage wrapped around his forehead, his handsome face pale under the fluorescent lights. "Min Seok?" she whispered, approaching the bed. He turned to look at her, and for a moment his eyes were blank. Then something flickered. Not recognition, but something else. Something she couldn't quite identify. "I'm sorry," he said slowly, his voice rough. "They told me you're my wife, but I don't remember you." Those words should have shattered her. Instead, Soo-Yeon felt an odd calmness settle over her heart. She reached out and took his hand, playing the role of the devoted wife she had always been. "It's okay," she said softly. "We'll get through this together. I'll help you remember." For the next 2 weeks, Soo-Yeon was the picture of dedication. She brought photo albums to the hospital, pointing to memories of their wedding, their honeymoon in Jeju Island, their first apartment in Mapo district. Min Seok would study each photo with furrowed brows, occasionally nodding, occasionally shaking his head. "I'm trying," he would say. "I really am, but it's like looking at someone else's life." The doctors were cautiously optimistic. "Selective amnesia can resolve itself over time," Dr. Kwon explained during one of their consultations. "The brain has remarkable healing capabilities. With patience and familiar stimuli, his memories may return." Soo-Yeon nodded, the perfect picture of a supportive spouse. But something nagged at her, something small and sharp like a splinter beneath her skin. It was the way Min Seok's eyes flickered when he thought she wasn't looking. The way his confusion seemed to have very specific boundaries. He couldn't remember their wedding, but he somehow remembered the password to his phone. He couldn't recognize his own wife, but he knew exactly which brand of coffee he preferred. One night, 3 weeks after the accident, Soo-Yeon pretended to fall asleep on the couch beside his hospital bed. She kept her breathing steady, her eyes closed, her body still. And she listened. The sound of careful footsteps, the soft click of a phone being unlocked, and then a whisper so quiet she almost missed it. "I can't talk long. She's here. Yes, the amnesia thing is working perfectly. The doctors even believe it. I know. I miss you too, Yuna. Just a few more weeks and I'll figure out how to divorce her without losing half of everything. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She's too busy trying to help me remember. A soft laugh. You should have seen her face when I pretended not to know who she was. 5 years of marriage and she bought it completely. I told you this would work. The accident was perfect timing. I'll call you tomorrow. Love you. The phone clicked off. Footsteps returned to the bed. The sheets rustled as Min Seok settled back into his pillow. Soo-Yeon didn't move. She barely breathed. Her heart, which should have been breaking, had turned to ice. She had heard everything. Every word. The casual cruelty of his laughter. The way he mocked her trust. The way he spoke about her as if she were nothing more than an obstacle to be overcome. In that moment, something died inside Soo-Yeon Park, and something else was born. The naive, trusting wife who had given up everything for her husband crumbled away like autumn leaves. In her place rose a woman with eyes clear as winter and a mind sharp as a blade. She lay in the darkness for hours, replaying his words in her mind. The amnesia thing is working perfectly. She bought it completely. I love you. That last phrase, spoken to another woman, echoed loudest of all. She had a choice. She could confront him now, scream and cry and demand explanations. She could cause a scene in this hospital room and walk away with her dignity in tatters. Or she could play a different game entirely. Soo-Yeon chose the game. The next morning, she woke up with red-rimmed eyes she had carefully cultivated with eye drops and smiled at her husband with such tender devotion that even she was impressed. Good morning, she said softly. Did you sleep well? I thought today we could look at videos from our first anniversary. Maybe they'll trigger something. Min Seok's expression shifted through several emotions. Surprise, then something like guilt, then that practiced confusion he had perfected. That would be nice, he said. Thank you for being so patient with me. I know this must be hard for you. You have no idea, Soo-Yeon thought. But what she said was, I love you. That's all that matters. Over the next few days in the hospital, she studied him like a scientist observing a specimen. She noted every inconsistency, every slip, every moment where his mask almost fell. When he forgot to maintain his confusion while watching a news report about a politician he supposedly didn't remember. When he automatically knew which button to press on the TV remote. When he answered a trivia question about Korean history that his amnesia should have erased. The doctors, she realized, only saw him during brief examinations. They asked questions and recorded his answers, but they didn't live with him. They didn't see the way his eyes flickered to his phone screen with recognition. They didn't hear him humming a song they had danced to at their wedding, a song he claimed not to remember. But Soo-Yeon saw. Soo-Yeon heard. Soo-Yeon remembered everything. She threw herself into her role with the dedication of an award-winning actress. Every day she arrived at the hospital with home-cooked meals, photo albums, and an endless supply of love and patience. She cried on cue when Min Seok failed to recognize old memories. She celebrated with appropriate joy when he claimed to remember small details. Meanwhile, she was building a case. Soo-Yeon had always been methodical. It was what made her excel in pharmaceutical research. She applied that same precision to her investigation. She tracked Min Seok's phone records through the cellular provider by claiming she needed to review their family plan. She noted every time he slipped up, remembering details he shouldn't if his amnesia were real. She carefully documented the inconsistencies. She also discovered the identity of Yuna, Han Yuna, 26 years old, an interior designer who had worked on Hanil Construction's model home project. Pretty, ambitious, and apparently quite skilled at seducing married men. A quick search of social media revealed photos of Yuna at restaurants Soo-Yeon recognized, wearing jewelry that matched items missing from their home safe. The Instagram profile told a story of its own. Yuna's carefully curated feed showed expensive vacations, designer clothes, and luxurious restaurants. All things that a junior interior designer couldn't possibly afford on her own salary. The captions were vague but suggestive. Spoiled by my love, under a photo of a Cartier bracelet. Dreams do come true, at a 5-star resort in Bali. Soo-Yeon recognized that bracelet. It had been a gift from Min Seok's mother, intended for their 5th anniversary. She had wondered where it went. Now she knew. She dug deeper, using skills she had developed during her pharmaceutical research days. LinkedIn revealed Yuna's professional history, and her pattern of short tenures at companies where she had quickly become close to senior male executives. Twitter showed a more unguarded version of her personality, with snide comments about wives who don't appreciate what they have and men who deserve better. The affair had been going on for almost a year. Min Seok had been planning his exit strategy all along, and the car accident had simply accelerated his timeline. But here was the thing about liars. They always underestimated the people they deceived. When Min Seok was discharged from the hospital a month after the accident, Soo-Yeon helped him into their apartment with gentle hands and a gentler smile. She had redecorated while he was hospitalized. All the photos on the walls were now labeled with little cards explaining who was in each picture and when it was taken. "I thought this might help," she explained, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion, "so you don't feel lost in your own home." Min Seok looked around at her handiwork and felt a twinge of something uncomfortable. Guilt, perhaps. Or maybe just the burden of keeping up his performance. "You're so thoughtful," he said, pulling her into a hug he didn't mean. "I don't deserve you." Truer words, Soo-Yeon thought, as she returned the embrace. The months that followed were a masterclass in deception, on both sides. Min Seok played the role of the recovering amnesia patient with increasing confidence. He would occasionally remember things, conveniently, always things that served his narrative. He remembered that he had been unhappy at work, but couldn't remember why. He remembered feeling unfulfilled in his life, but couldn't pinpoint the source. He was laying the groundwork for a divorce that would paint him as a victim of circumstance rather than a cheating husband. Soo-Yeon, meanwhile, was playing a longer game. She had quietly returned to the pharmaceutical industry, taking a consulting position that she worked from home. Min Seok assumed she was simply job hunting to stay busy, but in reality, she was rebuilding the career she had abandoned for him. Her former colleagues at Biogen Research were thrilled to have her back, even in a limited capacity. She also began transferring her share of their assets into secure accounts, slowly and carefully, so as not to raise suspicion. The apartment was in both their names, but she had quietly consulted with a lawyer, a woman named attorney Jin Hye-won, who specialized in divorce cases involving infidelity. "You have a strong case," attorney Jin told her during a discreet meeting at a cafe far from their neighborhood. "But the more evidence you can gather, the better. In Korea, adultery affects property division and can even impact his reputation professionally if he works for a company with strict moral clauses." Soo-Yeon nodded, her mind already 3 steps ahead. She also developed unexpected allies. Her sister-in-law, Min Seok's younger sister Eun-ji, had never been particularly close to Soo-Yeon during the marriage. But something shifted when Min Seok came home from the hospital. Eun-ji visited one afternoon while Min Seok was supposedly resting, though Soo-Yeon knew he was actually texting Yuna from the bedroom. "Can I be honest with you?" Eun-ji asked, clutching a cup of tea in the kitchen while Min Seok was out of earshot. Soo-Yeon raised an eyebrow. "Of course. Something doesn't feel right about my brother's condition." Yoon-ji's voice dropped to a whisper. "He claims he doesn't remember our childhood, but yesterday he mentioned our grandmother's house in Gyeongju. He supposedly can't remember that place. It burned down when we were teenagers." Soo-Yeon kept her expression neutral, but her heart quickened. She wasn't the only one who had noticed the cracks in Min Seok's performance. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying..." Yoon-ji hesitated, conflict playing across her face. "I'm saying I think he might be lying. And I don't know why. But I wanted you to know that you're not alone in feeling something's wrong." From that moment, Soo-Yeon had an unexpected partner in her silent investigation. Yoon-ji began sharing observations. Times when Min Seok slipped up, moments when his amnesia conveniently forgot to manifest. She also provided context that Soo-Yeon had been missing. "I found something in his old room at our parents' house," Yoon-ji told her during one of their private meetings, held at a cafe far from anywhere Min-seok might appear. Letters from a woman named Yuna. They go back almost 2 years. 2 years. Soo-Yeon felt the number settle into her chest like a stone. He had been cheating on her for 2 years, not 1. Their entire 4th and 5th years of marriage had been a lie. "Why are you helping me?" Soo-Yeon asked. Yoon-ji's eyes were sad but determined. "Because I grew up watching my brother charm his way out of every consequence. Our parents always made excuses for him. Min-seok is special. Min-seok has so much pressure. I love my brother, but I'm tired of watching him hurt people without facing any real accountability." She reached across the table and squeezed Soo-Yeon's hand. "You were a good wife to him. You didn't deserve this." The alliance with Yoon-ji gave Soo-Yeon access to information she couldn't have obtained otherwise. Family connections, Min-seok's old friends who might have known about the affair, financial details that painted an increasingly damning picture. She also made a discovery that would change everything. It happened 4 months into Min-seok's fake recovery. Soo-Yeon was doing laundry when she found a receipt in his jacket pocket. A receipt for a jewelry store in Apgujeong. The purchase was for a ring, priced at over 10 million won. It wasn't for her. That same week, Yoon-ji called with news. "I found more letters. Recent ones. They were planning to buy property together, a penthouse in Gangnam. He's been moving money through our father's old business account, trying to hide assets before the divorce." Soo-Yeon's jaw tightened. Not only was he cheating and lying about brain damage, he was committing financial fraud to ensure she got nothing in the divorce. "How much?" she asked. "From what I can tell, at least 300 million won. 300 million won. Nearly 5 years of her life, her career, her dreams, and he was trying to steal her rightful share of their assets, on top of everything else." The rage Soo-Yeon felt in that moment was cold and absolute. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about survival, and she was determined to survive. That night, she made sure to be extra attentive, cooking Min-seok's favorite dinner and listening patiently as he talked about his struggles at work, his ongoing confusion about their relationship, his hope that someday his memories would fully return. "I've been thinking," he said carefully, setting down his chopsticks. "Maybe we should consider options." "Options?" Soo-Yeon asked innocently. "The doctors said my amnesia might be permanent, and I've been doing a lot of reflecting. I'm not sure if it's fair to you, staying in a marriage with someone who doesn't remember falling in love with you." Soo-Yeon felt the familiar chill of his manipulation, but her expression remained soft and concerned. "What are you saying?" "Maybe we should consider separating, just to give ourselves both space to figure out what we really want." He reached across the table to take her hand. "I know this is hard, but I want what's best for both of us." It was a masterful performance. If Soo-Yeon hadn't known the truth, she might have even believed he cared about her well-being. "I understand," she said quietly, her voice trembling with perfectly timed emotion. "If that's what you need, I'll support you. I just want you to be happy." Min-seok's smile was one of victory. He thought he had won. He thought his gentle wife would fade away quietly, freeing him to start his new life with Yuna without the mess of a contested divorce. He had no idea that his wife had been counting down the days to this exact moment. The next morning, Soo-Yeon went to work as usual, or at least that's what she told Min-seok. In reality, she drove to the offices of Hanul Construction and requested a meeting with the company's chairman, Mr. Baek Seong-ho. She had done her research. Mr. Baek was a traditional man who valued integrity above all else. Hanul Construction had a strict code of conduct for senior employees, and Mr. Baek had personally terminated executives for moral failures in the past. "Mrs. Park," Mr. Baek said, studying her with curious eyes. "You said this matter was urgent and confidential." "It is, sir." Soo-Yeon placed a folder on his desk. "My husband has been having an affair with Han Yuna, one of your contracted interior designers. The relationship has been ongoing for almost a year." Mr. Beck's expression hardened as he opened the folder. Inside were phone records, photographs from social media geo-tagged to romantic locations, and credit card statements showing purchases of jewelry and expensive dinners. "There's more," Soo-Yeon continued. "After his car accident, my husband claimed to have amnesia. The doctors believed him. I believed him, at first. But his condition is fake. He staged it to create grounds for an easy divorce while protecting his assets." She handed over another document, a recording she had made during one of Min Seok's phone calls with Yuna, carefully transcribed. Mr. Beck listened to the recording with a deepening frown. When it ended, he set down his phone and looked at Soo-Yeon with something approaching respect. "Why are you bringing this to me instead of simply divorcing him?" Soo-Yeon met his gaze steadily. "Because my husband spent 5 years convincing me to sacrifice my career for his. Because he made me believe I was building a life with a partner who loved me. And because when the truth comes out, I want it to mean something. I want him to face real consequences, not just lose half his assets in a settlement." Mr. Beck was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I appreciate your coming to me, Mrs. Park. I'll need some time to verify these claims through our own channels. But if what you're telling me is true, your husband will face termination. Our code of conduct is clear on matters of integrity." Soo-Yeon stood to leave, then paused at the door. "There's one more thing you should know. Han Yuna has been using her position to steer construction contracts toward companies that pay her kickbacks. I don't have proof of that yet, but if you look into her financials, I think you'll find some irregularities." She left before Mr. Beck could respond, but she saw the spark of interest in his eyes. Yuna had been careless in her greed, and Soo-Yeon had noticed. What Soo-Yeon didn't know was that her comment about Yuna would trigger an avalanche she hadn't anticipated. Han Yuna had been running her side business for 3 years, long before she met Min Seok. What started as accepting small gifts from grateful contractors had evolved into a sophisticated kickback scheme worth hundreds of millions of won. She had shell companies, offshore accounts, and a network of accomplices within the construction industry. Min Seok knew about some of it. Yuna had told him bits and pieces, presenting it as smart business and everyone does it. He had chosen to look the other way, too blinded by desire to see the danger signs, too arrogant to think it could ever affect him. When Hanil Construction's internal investigation began, Yuna got wind of it through her own sources. She started making calls, shredding documents, moving money. She also started distancing herself from Min Seok. He was a liability now, a connection she couldn't afford. But Yuna had underestimated 2 things: the thoroughness of Chairman Beck's investigators and the depth of evidence Soo-Yeon had managed to gather. While Yuna was busy covering her tracks, Soo-Yeon had already given the chairman a paper trail that led directly to the heart of the scheme. The dominoes were falling, and Min Seok, still playing house with his fake amnesia, had no idea what was coming. If you're enjoying this story of karma in action, subscribe to the channel for more. Now let's see what happens when the truth finally comes to light. 1 week later, Soo-Yeon made her final move. She woke up early on a Saturday morning while Min Seok was still sleeping. Quietly, she packed 2 suitcases, one with her clothes, one with important documents and personal items. She loaded them into her car without making a sound. Then she returned to the apartment and cooked one last breakfast. Min Seok woke to the smell of coffee and doenjang jjigae, his favorite soup. He shuffled into the kitchen still half asleep and found his wife standing at the stove, an apron around her waist. "Good morning," she said brightly. "I made your favorites." He sat down at the table, a small smile on his face. Everything was going according to plan. She had agreed to a separation. Soon, he would be free. They ate in comfortable silence. When the meal was finished, Soo-Yeon stood and began clearing the dishes. "Min-seok," she said, her back to him. "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" She turned around, and something in her expression made him sit up straighter. The softness was gone from her eyes. In its place was something cold and sharp. "I know," she said simply. Min-seok's brow furrowed in practiced confusion. "Know what?" "I know about Yuna. I know about the affair. I know your amnesia is fake." She watched his face drain of color and felt nothing but satisfaction. "I've known since the hospital. You really should be more careful about your late-night phone calls." Min-seok's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Soo-Yeon, I don't know what you think you heard, but save it." Her voice was like ice. "I've spent the last 6 months watching you lie to my face. I've documented everything. Phone records, credit card statements, photographs. I even recorded your conversations with your mistress." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, playing a recording that made Min-seok's blood run cold. "The amnesia thing is working perfectly. The doctors even believe it." He lunged for the phone, but she stepped back easily, her eyes never leaving his face. "What do you want?" he demanded, his voice cracking. "Money." "Fine, we can negotiate." Soo-Yeon laughed, a genuine laugh, the first real emotion she had allowed herself to show in months. "What do I want? I wanted a husband who loved me. I wanted a partner I could trust. I wanted the future we planned together, but you took all of that and threw it away for a woman who doesn't care about you. Only what you can give her." She pulled an envelope from her bag and placed it on the table. "Divorce papers. I've already signed. You'll notice the terms are quite specific. I'm not asking for alimony. I'm not asking for the apartment. I'm taking only what I brought into this marriage and what I've earned during it." Min-seok stared at her, confused. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. That's all? Oh, I'm not finished." Soo-Yeon's smile was razor thin. "I also visited your company last week. Chairman Beck was very interested in the evidence I provided about your affair and your fraud. Faking a medical condition to manipulate a divorce? That's not just immoral, it's potentially illegal. I believe HR will be contacting you Monday morning." The color that had drained from Min-seok's face now flooded back in a rush of crimson. "You went to my company? You could ruin my career." "I didn't ruin anything. You did that yourself the moment you decided to cheat on your wife and lie about brain damage." She picked up her purse and walked toward the door. "Oh, and one more thing. I also provided some information about Yuna's side business. You know, the kickbacks from construction contracts. Turns out she wasn't just stealing your wife's husband. She was stealing from your company too." She opened the door and paused, looking back at the man she had once loved. He sat at their breakfast table, his perfectly pressed shirt now wrinkled, his carefully constructed lies crumbling around him. "You spent 6 months thinking you had me fooled," she said quietly. "But I was the one watching you the whole time. Every lie you told, every fake smile, every phone call with your mistress. I saw it all. And I waited because I wanted you to understand exactly what you lost." She stepped into the hallway. "Goodbye, Min-seok. I hope she's worth it." The door closed behind her with a soft click that felt like thunder. Min-seok sat frozen at the table for several minutes, his mind racing. This couldn't be happening. His perfect plan, his carefully orchestrated exit strategy. How had it all fallen apart? He stumbled to his feet and ran to the bedroom. The closet doors hung open, half of it empty. He pulled open her dresser drawers, all her clothes gone. The bathroom was the same. Her toiletries, her makeup, everything that said Soo-Yeon lives here, had vanished. He found the safe in the study open. The cash was still there. She had left it. But the important documents were gone. Her passport, their marriage certificate, records of their joint investments. She had taken only what she needed, leaving everything else as a testament to what she was walking away from. On the desk, he found a manila folder he hadn't noticed before. Inside were printed copies of every piece of evidence she had gathered: phone records, photographs, financial statements, transcribed recordings. Everything laid out in meticulous detail, organized and labeled. At the bottom was a handwritten note. "You spent 6 months performing for an audience of 1. I hope it was worth it. S." His phone buzzed. A text from Yuna. "Hey babe, when are you coming over? I have a surprise for you." He didn't respond. Instead, he called her. "Min Seok, I was just thinking about—" "She knows," he interrupted. "Soo-Yeon knows everything. The affair, the amnesia, everything. She went to my company." There was a long pause on the other end. "What do you mean she knows?" "I mean she had us figured out from the beginning. She was pretending the whole time, gathering evidence. She just walked out with divorce papers and told me I'm probably getting fired." He could hear Yuna's breathing change, faster, more anxious. "This is bad. This is really bad. What about—" She stopped herself mid-sentence. "What about what?" "Nothing. Never mind." Her voice hardened. "Listen to me, Min Seok. You need to call a lawyer. Deny everything. Say she's making things up because she's bitter about the divorce. She has recordings, Yuna. Phone records. Photographs. She documented everything for 6 months." A long silence. When Yuna spoke again, her voice was ice cold, a tone Min Seok had never heard from her before. "Then we have a problem. A big one." He heard movement on her end like she was packing something. "I need to think. Don't call me again until I contact you first." "Wait. Yuna, what's going on? Why are you—" "Min Seok." Her voice was sharp enough to cut. "Do not contact me. Do not come to my apartment. Do not even think about me. Understand?" "But I thought we were—" "You thought what? That I was going to stand beside you while everything burns down? That I was going to throw away everything I've built because you got caught?" She laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "We had fun, but don't mistake what this was. You were useful. Now you're a liability." "Useful?" Min Seok's voice cracked. "I bought you jewelry. I was going to divorce my wife for you. I have a ring. Keep it. Sell it. I don't care." He heard a door close on her end. "Goodbye, Min Seok. Take care of yourself." The line went dead. Min Seok stared at his phone, the device that had been his secret lifeline to his lover for almost a year. The woman he had thrown away his marriage for, the woman he had been planning a future with. She had discarded him in less than 60 seconds. He tried calling back. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried texting. No response. He tried calling again and again, until finally a recording informed him that the number was no longer in service. Yuna had blocked him and changed her number within an hour of learning the truth. She was already disappearing, already protecting herself, already moving on to her next chapter, a chapter that didn't include him at all. For the first time in 6 months, Min Seok Park understood what it felt like to be truly alone. Monday morning arrived like a death sentence. Min Seok dressed in his best suit, hoping that appearance might somehow mitigate the disaster awaiting him. He stood in front of the mirror for a long time, practicing his excuses, his denials, his expressions of confused innocence. The face that looked back at him was unrecognizable. Dark circles under his eyes, a gaunt pallor to his skin. He had barely slept since Saturday, replaying every moment, every mistake, wondering how he had been so thoroughly outmaneuvered by the woman he had dismissed as naive. He arrived at Hanil Construction's headquarters with his head held high, determined to face whatever came with dignity. The building he had entered thousands of times before suddenly felt hostile, its glass and steel facade reflecting his own haunted expression back at him. He made it as far as the lobby before security intercepted him. "Mr. Park, Please come with us. Mr. Chairman wishes to see you immediately. The security guards were men he knew, men he had joked with in the elevator, shared drinks with at company events. Now they flanked him like he was a criminal, their faces professionally blank. Other employees were arriving for work, and Min Seok felt their stares like physical blows. Word had spread over the weekend, he realized. The rumor mill at Hanul was notoriously efficient. The walk to the executive floor felt endless. Every step echoed in the marble hallway like a countdown. He passed conference rooms where meetings had already started, and he could see heads turn through the glass walls, watching him march to his professional execution. When they finally reached Chairman Bayek's office, Min Seok's palms were slick with sweat. Chairman Bayek was seated behind his massive mahogany desk, his face carved from stone. Beside him sat the company's legal counsel, a severe woman named Attorney Moon, who was known for her ruthless efficiency in corporate matters. On the other side sat the head of HR, Mr. Young, who avoided Min Seok's eyes. "Sit down, Mr. Park." Min Seok sat. "I'll make this brief," Chairman Beck said, his voice flat. "Your wife came to see me last week. She provided evidence of an ongoing affair with Han Yuna, as well as evidence that you faked a medical condition to manipulate your divorce proceedings. Sir, I can explain. I'm not finished." The chairman's eyes were cold. "We've spent the week verifying her claims. The evidence is overwhelming. Phone records, financial statements, witness testimonies from hospital staff who found your symptoms inconsistent with genuine amnesia." Min Seok opened his mouth, but no words came out. Additionally, our investigation into Ms. Han revealed significant irregularities in her contract recommendations. She's been steering business toward companies that pay her under the table, using your influence to make introductions. "I didn't know anything about that," Min Seok said quickly. "Yuna never told me." "We have records of calls between you discussing which contractors to recommend to the procurement department," Attorney Moon interjected, sliding a document across the table. "You may not have known the full extent of her scheme, but you facilitated it. Whether intentionally or through willful ignorance is a question our lawyers are still determining." Min Seok's blood ran cold. He scanned the document, phone records, email timestamps, contract dates. The evidence was overwhelming. "The prosecutors have already been contacted," Chairman Bayek continued. "Ms. Han left the country 3 days ago. She's believed to be in Malaysia, where we have no extradition treaty. You, however, are still here." "Prosecutors?" Min Seok's voice cracked. "Am I being charged with something?" "Not yet. Our legal team is cooperating with investigators to determine the full scope of the corruption. Your level of involvement will determine whether charges are filed." Chairman Bayek's eyes were merciless. "If you cooperate fully, provide evidence, testimony about Ms. Han's activities, the company will recommend leniency. If you don't..." He let the threat hang in the air. Min Seok felt the walls closing in. Yuna had used him. He could see it clearly now. The way she had always asked about work projects, the way she had encouraged him to introduce her to certain executives, the way she had steered conversations toward procurement decisions. He had been so blinded by flattery and attention that he hadn't seen the manipulation for what it was. "Perhaps," Chairman Bayek said, his voice final, "your association with her, combined with your own ethical failures, makes your position here untenable." He slid a document across the desk. "This is a termination notice, effective immediately. You'll receive your legally required severance, nothing more. Your security clearance has been revoked, and you're banned from company property. But sir, I've worked here for 8 years. And in 8 years, you never learned that integrity is the foundation of everything we do here." Chairman Bayek stood, signaling the meeting was over. "You're dismissed, Mr. Park. HR will arrange for your personal items to be sent to your home." 2 security guards appeared at the door. Min Seok stood on shaking legs, his face burning with humiliation. "One more thing," Chairman Bayek said as Min Seok reached the door. "I've contacted our industry association about your conduct. You'll find it." Difficult to secure another position at your former level. Min Seok turned back, his face ashen. Sir, please, I have a mortgage. You should have thought about that before you decided to fake brain damage and steal company resources to impress your mistress. Chairman Bayek's voice was like granite. Your expense reports from the past year are being reviewed. I believe we'll find several instances of personal items charged to the company. Consider yourself fortunate we're not pressing charges. The security guard stepped forward, and Min Seok had no choice but to comply. The walk out of Hanul Construction was the longest of Min Seok's life. He passed colleagues who averted their eyes, assistants who whispered behind their hands. In the elevator, he found himself alone with Park Jun-sang, a junior manager he had once mentored. I'm sorry, sir, Jun-sang said quietly, staring at the floor. I heard what happened. I never would have expected. Expected what? Min Seok's voice was sharp with humiliation. Nothing, sir. I just meant... Jun-sang shook his head. Never mind. Good luck. The elevator doors opened, and Jun-sang practically fled. In the lobby, the security desk had been alerted to his termination. His access badge was confiscated. His parking pass was revoked. A guard escorted him to his car in the executive lot, his reserved spot already marked with yellow tape indicating it was no longer his. By the time he reached the street, he felt like a ghost, invisible and irrelevant. The apartment was empty when he returned. Soo-Yeon's absence felt physical now, a negative space that pressed against him from every direction. He wandered from room to room, looking at the labeled photographs she had put up during his recovery, and feeling something break inside him with each one. Their wedding day. A trip to Jeju Island. Her birthday dinner at that restaurant she loved. He had forgotten that restaurant existed until he saw the photograph. Now, suddenly, he remembered everything about that night. The way she laughed at his jokes. The way she held his hand across the table. The way she looked at him like he was the most important person in her world. When had he stopped seeing that look? When had he started taking it for granted? He called Yuna one more time, desperate for some human connection. The number had been disconnected. Meanwhile, Soo-Yeon was beginning her new life. She had rented a small but comfortable apartment in Hongdae, the vibrant creative district where she had always wanted to live. The space was nothing like the cold luxury of her marital home. It was warm, colorful, filled with plants and books and artwork that reflected her actual personality rather than the neutral beiges Min Seok had preferred. The first night alone, she sat in the middle of her new living room surrounded by boxes and cried, not from sadness, but from relief. For the first time in years, she was in a space that was entirely her own. No one else's preferences to consider, no lies to navigate, no performances to maintain. She unpacked slowly, savoring the process. Each item she placed on a shelf or hung on a wall was a declaration of independence. The colorful throw pillows Min Seok had called too loud. The abstract paintings her mother had given her that he'd relegated to the guest room. The books on pharmaceutical research she'd stopped reading because he complained they cluttered the house. She was reclaiming herself, one possession at a time. Her consulting work at Biogen had evolved into a full-time position as a senior research coordinator. Her former mentor, Dr. Kim Jae-won, had been thrilled to welcome her back to the team. I always said you were wasted staying home, Dr. Kim told her over lunch one day. Your mind is too sharp for just supporting someone else's career. Soo-Yeon smiled, truly smiled, for what felt like the first time in years. I know that now. The work itself was challenging and fulfilling in ways she had forgotten. Her research focused on enzyme inhibitors for autoimmune conditions, complex work that required both creativity and precision. She threw herself into it with the same dedication she had once applied to being the perfect wife, and the results were remarkable. Within 6 months, she had co-authored 2 papers and was presenting at major conferences. Colleagues who had watched her fade into domesticity 5 years earlier now sought her expertise. She was building a reputation, a career, a future that belonged entirely to her. But the transformation wasn't just professional. She started running again, something she had abandoned when Min Seok complained about her early morning routines disrupting his sleep. She took cooking classes and learned to make dishes she actually enjoyed, not just the Korean classics he had demanded. She reconnected with old friends who had drifted away during her marriage, women who welcomed her back with open arms and no judgment. "We always wondered what happened to you," her college friend Mi Young said over coffee one afternoon. "You used to be so vibrant, and then after you got married, it was like you were fading." "I was," Soo-Yeon admitted. "I just didn't know it." 2 months after leaving Min Seok, she attended a pharmaceutical industry conference at the COEX Center in Gangnam. It was there that she met Han Jun-ho. She didn't know who he was at first. He was just a tall man in an immaculately tailored suit who happened to reach for the same coffee cup she did. "I'm sorry," he said, stepping back with a small bow. "Please, go ahead." "No, it's fine." Soo-Yeon gestured to the spread of cups. "There are plenty." But he insisted. And there was something about his manner, confident without being arrogant, attentive without being overbearing, that made her pause. "You're Park Soo-Yeon, aren't you?" he asked. "Dr. Kim mentioned you'd be presenting today. I read your paper on targeted enzyme inhibitors. Fascinating work." Soo-Yeon blinked, surprised. "You read pharmaceutical research papers for fun." A hint of a smile crossed his otherwise serious face. "I'm in the business of investing in promising research. Understanding what I'm investing in seems prudent." Later, she would learn that Han Jun-ho was the CEO of Apex Ventures, one of Korea's most prestigious investment firms, specializing in pharmaceutical and biotech innovations. His company had funded some of the most significant medical breakthroughs of the past decade, but in that moment, he was just a man who had read her work and wanted to discuss it over coffee. They talked for 45 minutes and missed the first panel of the conference. Jun-ho asked questions that showed genuine understanding of her field, offered insights from the investment perspective that she found surprisingly valuable. "I hope this isn't too forward," he said, as the conference officially began, and they reluctantly moved toward the main hall. "But I'd like to continue this conversation. Perhaps over dinner." Soo-Yeon hesitated. It had only been 2 months since her divorce. She wasn't sure she was ready. "As colleagues," Jun-ho added quickly, reading her hesitation. "I'm genuinely interested in your research. No other expectations." His sincerity was disarming. "Okay," she found herself saying. "As colleagues." Their first dinner lasted 4 hours. Their second dinner a week later lasted 5. By the third dinner, Soo-Yeon realized she was looking forward to seeing him in a way she hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. But she was cautious. She had trusted before and been devastated. So she kept her guard up, even as Jun-ho proved himself patient and consistent. He never pushed. He never assumed. When she told him about her divorce, a brief summary without the uglier details, he simply nodded and said, "I'm sorry you experienced that. I'm glad you found the strength to leave." No pity, no judgment, just understanding. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened gradually, like water shaping stone. Jun-ho would send her articles related to her research with thoughtful annotations. She would text him pictures from her lab when an experiment went well. They developed their own shorthand, their own inside jokes, their own rhythm of communication. But it was the small moments that showed her who he really was. One evening, they were having dinner at a quiet restaurant in Samcheongdong when Jun-ho got a phone call. His expression shifted as he listened. Concern, then resignation. "I'm sorry," he said after hanging up. "There's an emergency at one of our portfolio companies. I need to handle some calls." Soo-Yeon expected him to leave, or at least to spend the rest of dinner distracted by his phone. Instead, he looked at her with an apologetic smile. Would you mind if I stepped outside for 20 minutes? I don't want to ruin our dinner, but I also don't want to leave you sitting alone. It was such a small thing. Asking rather than assuming, explaining rather than dismissing. Min Seok would have simply walked out without a word, assuming she would understand and wait. Take your time, she said. I'll order dessert. He returned in exactly 20 minutes, having resolved the crisis with his usual efficiency. And he immediately returned his full attention to her, asking about her day as if the interruption had never happened. Another time, she mentioned offhandedly that she was having trouble with a particular software tool in her lab. 2 days later, a technician arrived at Biogen to provide a free training session, arranged and paid for by Apex Ventures, as a corporate partnership benefit. You didn't have to do that, she told Junho later. I know, he said simply. I wanted to help. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't dramatic. It was just care. Consistent, thoughtful care that asked for nothing in return. It was 3 months into their friendship, because that's what she insisted on calling it, when Soo-Yeon finally let herself believe he might be different. They were at a restaurant in Itaewon, sharing a bottle of wine after a long day at another conference. Junho had just finished telling her about a research project his company was funding, a potential treatment for a rare pediatric disease. The returns will be minimal, he admitted. The patient population is too small for significant profit. But sometimes business isn't just about the bottom line. Soo-Yeon studied him across the table. This man who could be cold and calculating in boardrooms, but who funded pediatric research because it was right. You're not what I expected, she said. He raised an eyebrow. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone colder, maybe. More mercenary. You run an investment firm. You're supposed to be obsessed with returns. I am obsessed with returns, he said, a ghost of a smile on his lips. But I've learned that some of the best returns aren't monetary. The reputation Apex has built by supporting research that matters, that opens doors that pure profit-chasing never would. He reached across the table and hesitantly took her hand. I've also learned that the most valuable things in life aren't always the ones you can measure on a spreadsheet. Soo-Yeon looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. His expression was open, vulnerable in a way she suspected he rarely allowed himself to be. Junho, I know you're not ready, he said quickly, and I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I think you're extraordinary. Not just as a researcher, as a person. You've been through something terrible, and instead of letting it break you, you rebuilt yourself into someone even stronger. He squeezed her hand gently. Whatever happens between us, I want you to know that I see you. The real you. And I admire everything I see. Soo-Yeon didn't answer immediately. She didn't trust her voice, but she didn't let go of his hand either. 6 months after her divorce, Soo-Yeon received an unexpected message. It was from Min Seok. Can we meet? Please, I just need to talk. Her first instinct was to delete it and move on. But curiosity, and perhaps a small, vindictive part of her that wanted to see how far he had fallen, made her respond. They met at a cafe in Uido, neutral territory far from both their homes. When Soo-Yeon arrived, she barely recognized the man waiting at the corner table. Min Seok had lost weight. Not the healthy kind of weight loss from exercise, the gaunt, hollow kind that came from stress and sleepless nights. His suit, once impeccably tailored, hung loose on his frame. Dark circles under his eyes made him look 10 years older. Thank you for coming, he said as she sat down. His voice was rough, uncertain. Soo-Yeon said nothing. She simply waited. I know I don't deserve this. I don't deserve anything from you. He stared at his coffee cup, unable to meet her eyes. I just needed to say something. To apologize, I guess, even though I know it's too late. Go on. Everything fell apart after you left. The job, obviously. But it was more than that. Yuna disappeared. Literally, she left the country after Hanul Construction started investigating her contracts. She was laundering money through those kickbacks, did you know? Not just taking payments, actually helping construction companies evade taxes. She's facing federal charges if she ever comes back to Korea. Soo-Yeon kept her expression neutral, though she felt a dark satisfaction at this news. My reputation is destroyed. No one in the industry will touch me. I've been doing freelance consulting work, but... He laughed bitterly. My own family won't speak to me. My mother told me she's ashamed to call me her son. He finally looked up at her, and there were actual tears in his eyes. I threw away everything, for a woman who was using me. And I threw away the one person who actually cared about me. His voice broke. I'm so sorry, Soo-Yeon. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know that I understand now. I understand what I lost. Soo-Yeon studied the man she had once loved, the man she had once built her entire life around. She felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no vindication. Just emptiness where he used to live in her heart. I forgive you, she said finally. Min-seok's head snapped up. You do? For my own peace, not yours. Soo-Yeon stood, gathering her purse. I'm not carrying anger around anymore. It's too heavy, and you're not worth the weight. She looked down at him, this broken man who had once made her feel so small. But I want you to understand something. You didn't lose me because you got caught. You lost me the moment you decided to deceive me. Every day for 6 months, I watched you lie to my face, and I chose to stay silent. Not because I was weak, but because I was building a life without you. You were already gone from my heart long before I walked out that door. Min-seok's eyes were wet with tears he didn't bother to hide. Do you ever think about what might have happened? If I hadn't. If we had. No, Soo-Yeon said firmly. I don't waste time on hypotheticals. The man I married didn't exist. He was a performance you got tired of maintaining. The real you was always there, hiding behind fake smiles and empty promises. I'm grateful I finally got to see him. She turned to leave, then paused. And Min-seok? For what it's worth, I do believe you're sorry. Not sorry for what you did. Sorry that it didn't work out the way you planned. There's a difference. When you figure out what that difference is, maybe you'll actually become a better person. But that's your journey, not mine. She took one last look at him. The man who had once held her heart, now barely recognizable. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I genuinely do. But don't contact me again. This is goodbye. She walked out of the cafe and into the Seoul sunlight, feeling lighter than she had in years. Behind her, Min-seok remained at the table for a long time, staring at his cold coffee and wondering when exactly he had lost control of his own story. 1 year after her divorce, Soo-Yeon stood on the rooftop garden of Apex Ventures' headquarters building, looking out over the glittering Seoul skyline. The city sprawled before her in a sea of lights, a testament to constant change and reinvention. You're going to miss the toast. She turned to find Jun-ho approaching, 2 champagne glasses in hand. Behind them, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a party was in full swing, a celebration of Biogen's successful drug approval, the first tangible result of the partnership between her company and his. I needed a moment, she admitted. He handed her a glass and stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Overwhelmed? In a good way. She sipped the champagne. A year ago, I was watching my husband pretend to forget our entire marriage. Now I'm watching a drug I helped develop get approved to help people. It's a lot to process. You've come a long way. We've come a long way. She looked at him then, This man who had become so important to her life in ways she never expected. I never thanked you properly, for being patient, for never pressuring me, for letting me find my own way back to trusting someone. Junho set down his glass and turned to face her fully. You don't need to thank me. Waiting for you wasn't a hardship, Soo-Yeon. It was a privilege. Her heart felt her heart expand in her chest. I love you, she said. The words came out easily, naturally, as if they had been waiting all this time for the right moment. His smile, rare and precious, broke across his usually stoic face. I've loved you since the pharmaceutical conference, when you tried to steal my coffee. I did not try to steal your... She stopped, laughing despite herself. Okay, maybe I was reaching for the same cup. You were definitely reaching for my cup. We'll never agree on this. We have plenty of time to argue about it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Starting, perhaps, with the rest of our lives. Soo-Yeon stared at the box, her heart pounding. Junho, I know it might be too soon. I know you might need more time. He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Nothing ostentatious, nothing designed to show off. Just a beautiful stone set in platinum, perfect in its understated elegance. But I wanted you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Whenever you're ready, if you ever are, I'll be here. The ring caught the light from the cityscape behind them, casting small rainbows across the rooftop. It was, Soo-Yeon realized, nothing like the engagement ring Min Se-ok had given her years ago. That had been large and flashy, chosen more for its impressive price tag than for any thought about her preferences. This ring was different. This ring was her. I had it designed, Junho admitted, noticing her gaze. Based on what I've learned about you over these months. You don't like flashy things. You prefer quality over quantity. You want meaning, not just expense. He paused, suddenly uncertain. If you don't like it, we can... It's perfect, she said softly. It's absolutely perfect. Soo-Yeon looked at the ring, then at the man holding it. This man who had shown her, through 1,000 small actions, what real partnership looked like. Who had invested in her professionally and supported her personally without ever demanding anything in return. Who had waited patiently while she healed, never pushing, never assuming. She thought about Min Se-ok's grand gestures that had hidden an empty heart, and she thought about Junho's quiet consistency that revealed a soul worth trusting. Yes, she said. Junho blinked. Yes, yes, I'll marry you, not whenever. Now, yes. He stared at her for a long moment, as if unable to believe what he was hearing. Then he laughed, a real laugh, full and warm, and pulled her into his arms. I had a whole speech prepared, he murmured against her hair, about patience in the future and building something lasting together. You can tell me later. She pulled back to look at his face. Right now, I just want you to put that ring on my finger. He did. It fit perfectly. How did you know my size? She asked, holding up her hand to admire the way the ring caught the light. Dr. Kim helped me, he admitted. I may have borrowed your old lab coat for the measurements. You coordinated with my mentor? I coordinated with everyone. Your mother, your friends, your colleagues. I wanted to make sure I did this right. He took her hand in his. You've had someone do it wrong before. I wanted to show you what it looks like when someone does it right. Soo-Yeon felt tears prick her eyes, happy tears, grateful tears. You're impossible. I prefer thorough. They returned to the party hand in hand, and when Junho announced their engagement, the room erupted in cheers. Dr. Kim was crying. The board members of both companies were clapping. Even the catering staff seemed moved. But Soo-Yeon barely noticed the celebration around her. She was looking at the ring on her finger, thinking about the journey that had brought her here, She had been married to a man who faked loving her. Now she was engaged to a man who had shown her what real love looked like. Patient, consistent, true. The universe, she decided, had a sense of justice after all. The wedding took place the following spring, in a beautiful garden venue in the mountains outside Seoul. It was an intimate affair. Close friends, family, colleagues who had become like family. No extravagance, no showing off. Just two people who had found each other and wanted to begin their life together. Soo-Yeon wore a simple white dress that made her feel like herself. Junho cried when he saw her walking toward him, something he would deny for years afterward despite multiple witnesses. The ceremony was conducted by an old family friend of Junho's, a retired judge who spoke about the nature of true partnership. Marriage is not about losing yourself in another person, he said. It's about finding someone who sees who you truly are and chooses to walk beside you anyway. Soo-Yeon thought about those words as she exchanged vows with the man who had shown her what that really meant. Dr. Kim gave a speech that made everyone laugh. I've known Soo-Yeon since she was a young researcher too brilliant for her own good, she said. I watched her dim her own light to make someone else comfortable. And now I'm watching her shine brighter than ever, beside someone who adds to that light instead of trying to contain it. That's what love should be. Junho's mother, a formidable woman named Madame Han, who had initially been suspicious of her son's suddenly romantic behavior, embraced Soo-Yeon and called her daughter. I didn't raise my son to be emotional, Madame Han confided during the reception. But the first time he mentioned your name, I knew something had changed in him. You brought him back to himself. She took Soo-Yeon's hands in her own. Welcome to our family. Truly. Eun-ji was there too, Min-seok's sister, who had become a true friend during those dark months. She had officially cut ties with her brother after the scandal, unable to forgive his treatment of Soo-Yeon. I always wanted a sister, Eun-ji said, raising her glass in a private toast. I'm glad I finally got one, even if it took my idiot brother making the worst mistake of his life to make it happen. It was, by all accounts, a perfect day. But the true test of their new beginning came 2 months after the wedding, at an industry gala they were obligated to attend. Soo-Yeon was deep in conversation with a potential research partner when she felt Junho stiffen beside her. She followed his gaze across the crowded ballroom and felt her heart stutter. Min-seok stood near the entrance, looking marginally more put together than he had at the cafe. He wore a suit that almost fit, and he was accompanied by a woman Soo-Yeon didn't recognize. Thin, anxious-looking, hanging on his arm like a life preserver. Their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. All the old feelings threatened to surface. The anger, the betrayal, the pain. But Soo-Yeon took a breath, felt Junho's steady presence beside her, and let it go. Min-seok approached. There was nothing she could do to stop it, without causing a scene. Soo-Yeon, he said. His voice was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his jaw. You look well. I am well. She felt Junho's hand on the small of her back, supportive, not possessive. Min-seok, this is my husband, Han Junho. Junho, this is my ex-husband. The two men regarded each other. Junho's expression was perfectly composed, but there was steel in his eyes. Min-seok, to his credit, didn't flinch. Congratulations on your marriage, Min-seok said. I heard through the grapevine. His smile was strained. Apex Ventures, right? You certainly traded up. The implication was clear and ugly. Soo-Yeon felt Junho tense beside her, but she placed a calming hand on his arm. I didn't trade anything, she said evenly. I just stopped accepting less than I deserved. She glanced at the woman on Min-seok's arm, who was watching their exchange with barely concealed anxiety. Good luck with your evening. The woman, thin, nervous, perhaps early 30s, spoke up unexpectedly. You're the ex-wife? The pharmaceutical researcher? Soo-Yeon raised an eyebrow. I am. The woman's expression was complicated, somewhere between admiration and fear. He talks about you sometimes, about how successful you've become. She glanced at Min Seok, whose face had gone red. He says he made a mistake. Ji-yeon, Min Seok hissed, not now. But Ji-yeon wasn't finished. I just wanted to say, you seem happy. Really happy. That's good to see. Soo-Yeon felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for this woman who had clearly heard stories of her predecessor. Thank you. I hope you find your own happiness too. She turned and walked away, Junho falling into step beside her. She could feel Min Seok's eyes on her back, could practically hear his thoughts churning. Are you all right? Junho asked quietly once they were across the room. I'm fine. And she was surprised to realize she meant it. He has no power over me anymore. He's just a person I used to know. That woman he was with, she seemed trapped. Soo-Yeon nodded. I recognized the look. I wore it for years without knowing. Junho studied her face, then nodded. Have I told you today how much I admire you? Only twice. You're slipping. He smiled and pulled her onto the dance floor as a new song began. As they swayed together, Soo-Yeon caught one last glimpse of Min Seok across the room. He was watching them, his expression a mix of regret and something darker, envy perhaps, or the dawning realization of everything he had thrown away. She turned her attention back to her husband, her partner, her future. The past was exactly where it belonged, behind her. Epilogue. 2 years later. The research center bore her name, the Park Soo-Yeon Center for Pharmaceutical Innovation. It was housed in a sleek modern building on the outskirts of Seoul, funded by Apex Ventures, and staffed by some of the brightest minds in Korean medical research. Soo-Yeon stood at the entrance on the center's opening day, watching as guests filed past the banner bearing her name. It still felt surreal. The center had been Junho's idea, presented to her on their first anniversary. Your research deserves more than lab space in someone else's building, he had said. It deserves a home, a place where you can mentor the next generation while pursuing your own discoveries. She had protested, of course. It was too much, too extravagant, too risky. The only risk, Junho had countered, is not supporting the best researcher I know. He had taken her hands and looked at her with those serious eyes. This isn't charity. This is investment in the future. And I've never made a bad investment. The center had taken 18 months to build and staff. Soo-Yeon had been involved in every decision, from the layout of the laboratories, to the hiring of senior researchers, to the design of the courtyard garden where scientists could take breaks surrounded by nature. Now, looking at the finished product, she couldn't believe it was real. You deserve this, Junho said, reading her thoughts as he always seemed to. He stood beside her, their 6-month-old daughter asleep in his arms. You worked for it. We worked for it, she corrected. None of this would exist without your funding. The funding was the easy part. The vision was all you. She couldn't argue with that. The center represented everything she had dreamed of during those dark years with Min Seok, a place where she could pursue meaningful research, mentor young scientists, make a difference in people's lives. It was her life's work given form. Their daughter, named Minjung after Soo-Yeon's grandmother, stirred in Junho's arms but didn't wake. She had her mother's eyes and her father's serious expression. Already, at 6 months, she seemed to be contemplating the mysteries of the universe. The ceremony was beautiful. Speeches were made, ribbons were cut, champagne was poured. Dr. Kim was there, beaming with pride. Her mother, who had flown in from Busan, cried throughout the entire event. My daughter, her mother kept saying, clutching Soo-Yeon's arm. My brilliant daughter. Your father would be so proud. Soo-Yeon felt tears prick her own eyes at the mention of her father, who had passed away during her marriage to Min Seok. He had never liked Min Seok, though he had been too polite to say so directly. She wished he could see her now, happy, successful, loved by a man who deserved her love in return. But the moment that Soo-Yeon would remember most came later, after most of the guests had left. She was standing in her new office, her office with her name on the door, when her assistant knocked. "Dr. Park? There's someone here to see you. He says he's an old friend, but he doesn't have an appointment." Soo-Yeon sighed, already suspecting who it was. "Send him in." Min Seok entered the office slowly, his eyes taking in the elegant space, the view of the mountains, the plaques and awards already adorning the walls. He looked older than his years, worn down by life in a way that might have brought her satisfaction once. Now it just made her tired. "This is impressive," he said, gesturing around the room. "You've built something real here." "I know." She didn't offer him a seat. "What do you want, Min Seok?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I'm leaving Korea," he finally said. "Starting over in America. A company there is willing to give me a chance, and I thought I should say goodbye. Properly this time." "I see. I also wanted to tell you." He struggled with the words. "I've had a lot of time to think over the past 2 years, about what I did, about who I was." He met her eyes. "I was wrong. Not just about the affair or the lies, about everything. I was so focused on what I thought I wanted that I couldn't see what I actually had." Soo-Yeon said nothing. She simply waited. "You were right," he continued. "I lost you the moment I decided to deceive you, and I've been losing ever since." He laughed bitterly. "Karma, I suppose." "I don't believe in karma," Soo-Yeon said. "I believe in consequences. Every choice has them. You made your choices. These are your consequences. And you made yours." He looked around the office again. "Better ones, apparently." "Yes, I did." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Min Seok nodded, a gesture of acknowledgement, maybe even acceptance. "Be happy, Soo-Yeon. You deserve it." He turned and walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when she spoke. "Min Seok," he paused. "I hope you find peace. I mean that. But more importantly..." She looked at him with clear, steady eyes. "I hope you become someone who deserves it." He nodded slowly, something shifting in his expression. Not quite understanding, but perhaps the beginning of it. "I'll try. I know that doesn't mean much coming from me, but I'll try." "Good." She walked around her desk and extended her hand. "Goodbye, Min Seok. Officially this time." He took her hand and shook it once, a formal gesture that felt like the closing of a very long chapter. Then he released it and walked out the door, his footsteps echoing in the hallway until they faded to nothing. Soo-Yeon stood alone in her office for a long moment, processing. The man she had once loved, the man who had caused her so much pain, he was finally, truly gone from her life. Not with drama or confrontation, but with a simple handshake and a quiet farewell. It was, she realized, exactly how it should end. She smiled, walked to the window, and looked out at the mountains. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Junho appeared at her side, still carrying their daughter. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect." She leaned into him, this man who had taught her what love really looked like. "Let's go home." They walked out of the Park Soo-Yeon Center for Pharmaceutical Innovation together, a family built on trust and truth. The sun was setting over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Some stories end with the villain on their knees, begging for mercy. Others end with the hero in triumph, surrounded by wealth and power. But the best stories, the truest stories, end with something simpler and more profound. They end with a woman who lost everything, rebuilt herself from the ashes, and found a love that was real. They end with peace, and Soo-Yeon Park had finally, completely, found hers. As for the others in this story, their endings were just as fitting. Han Yuna was eventually caught by Interpol in Thailand, 2 years after fleeing Korea. She faced trial for fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The evidence compiled by Hanul Construction's investigators, combined with testimonies from contractors she had extorted, resulted in a 15-year prison sentence. She would never work in design again. Min-seok's new life in America was harder than he expected. The position that had been offered fell through when his background check revealed the circumstances of his departure from Hanul. He eventually found work at a small construction firm in New Jersey, earning a fraction of his former salary. The woman he had brought with him, Ji-yeon, left after 6 months, unable to tolerate his bitterness and his drinking. Yoonji, Min-seok's sister, remained in Seoul and eventually reconciled with her brother through carefully worded letters. She visited him once in America and found a man who was slowly, painfully learning humility. They would never be close again, but they managed to be civil, which was more than she had expected. Dr. Kim retired from Biogen, but became the first chair of the advisory board at the Park Soo-Yeon Center, mentoring the next generation of researchers with the same wisdom and patience she had shown her former student. And Soo-Yeon herself? She continued her research, raised her daughter, and built a life that looked nothing like what she had once imagined, and was better in every way that mattered. Some nights, she would stand at the window of the home she shared with Junho and watch the lights of Seoul twinkling like earthbound stars. She would think about the journey that had brought her here, the pain, the betrayal, the long months of pretending, and the even longer months of healing. If someone had told her, 3 years ago, that her husband's fake amnesia would be the best thing that ever happened to her, she would have laughed in their face. Now she knew better. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the cruelest disguises. Sometimes the worst betrayals become the foundation for the greatest transformations. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person you were meant to become was waiting on the other side of the worst thing that ever happened to you. Soo-Yeon smiled, turned away from the window, and went to check on her sleeping daughter. The past was finally, truly, behind her. The future was bright, and she was ready for it. Every sunset, she thought to herself, is just a sunrise seen from the other side. Her sunrise had finally come.